The bridge of the Soul's Fury was silent, except for the soft hum of the ship's engines. Admiral Hyun-woo Kim stood before the main communication console, his hands clasped behind his back. Around him, the crew worked quietly at their stations. Everyone knew what was about to happen. Today, humanity would send its final message to the Galactic Empire. "Admiral, all channels are ready," reported Communications Officer Mi Young-song. Her voice was steady, but Hyun-woo could see the tension in her shoulders. They all felt it. This moment would change everything. Hyun-woo nodded and stepped forward to the recording device. Behind him, the massive view screen showed the cold stars of space. Soon, beings across the galaxy would see this image and hear his words. He took a deep breath and began. "To the Galactic Empire, this is Admiral Hyun-woo Kim of the Human Defense Fleet. For too long you have taken our people as slaves. You have attacked our colonies. You have treated humanity like animals to be hunted and caged. We have asked you to stop. We have begged you to leave us alone. You have ignored our words." His voice grew stronger as he continued. "Now we give you one final chance. You have 72 hours to remove all your forces from human space. You will release every human prisoner. You will stop all attacks on our people. If you do not do these things, we will show you what humans can really do." Hyun-woo paused, letting his words sink in. Around the bridge, his crew watched him with pride. They had waited so long for this moment. "We are not like the other species you have conquered," he said. "We do not break easily. We do not give up. We learn from every fight. We remember every wrong done to us. And when we are pushed too far, we push back harder than you can imagine." The Admiral's eyes seemed to look directly through the camera at every Imperial leader who would see this message. "This is your final warning. We conquer. We devour. You have 72 hours. The transmission ended. Mi Young looked up at him. "Message sent on all Imperial frequencies, Admiral. Every ship, every station, every planet in their territory will receive it." "Good," Hyun-woo said. He turned to the tactical officer. "Lieutenant Yun-soo, signal the fleet. Operation Devour begins now." Across the galaxy, the message traveled through space at the speed of light. On Imperial ships, alien officers stopped their work to listen. On conquered worlds, both Imperial soldiers and oppressed populations heard the human words. In the great halls of the Imperial capital, the ruling council gathered to discuss this unexpected challenge. The Galactic Empire had ruled for over 1,000 years. They had destroyed entire civilizations. They had turned proud species into slaves. They had spread across the galaxy like a disease, taking what they wanted and crushing anyone who resisted. To them, humans were just another primitive species that needed to be taught their place. Chancellor Vextar, the Empire's supreme leader, laughed when he heard the message. His scaled face twisted into a cruel smile as he addressed the council. "These humans think they can threaten us? They are nothing but clever animals. We have crushed species far more advanced than them." "Perhaps we should take their threat seriously," suggested one council member, a blue-skinned alien with 4 arms. "Our reports say they have been building ships and weapons." Vextar's laugh grew louder. "Let them build their toys. We have 2 million ships spread across the galaxy. Our technology has conquered 100 worlds. What can one small species do against the might of the Empire?" But not everyone dismissed the human threat so easily. Deep within the Imperial Intelligence Center, Captain Bo-Ram Lee sat at her desk reading reports about human activity. To her colleagues, she was just another Imperial officer, loyal to the Empire. They did not know that she had been born on Earth. They did not know that she had spent years working her way into this position, gathering information and waiting for the right moment. Boram had watched the human message 3 times. She knew Admiral Hyunwoo personally. She had trained with him years ago before she volunteered for this dangerous mission. If he was making this threat, it meant humanity was finally ready to show their true strength. She looked around the intelligence center. Imperial officers worked at their stations, analyzing data from across the galaxy. They were good at their jobs, but they had one big weakness. They thought they knew everything. They believed their own propaganda about imperial superiority. They had never faced an enemy like humanity. Boram quietly activated her hidden communication device. Using a code that looked like normal data traffic, she sent a message to Earth. Message received and distributed successfully. Imperial response predictable. They are not taking the threat seriously. Military preparations should proceed as planned. Across the galaxy, other humans received similar reports. On mining worlds, where humans worked as slaves, hidden resistance cells prepared for action. On trade stations, human merchants who seemed loyal to the Empire quietly checked their weapons. In Imperial military academies, human students who had spent years earning their teachers' trust got ready to show their true loyalty. The Empire had made a mistake when they started taking humans as prisoners and slaves. They thought they were getting free labor. Instead, they had given humanity thousands of agents spread throughout their territory. Every human who had been captured, every human who had pretended to surrender, every human who had worked their way into Imperial society was now a weapon waiting to be used. On Earth, General Taemin Park stood in the command center deep beneath the planet's surface. Around him, holographic displays showed the positions of ships and armies across the galaxy. For years, humanity had been preparing for this moment. They had built weapons in secret. They had trained soldiers in hidden bases. They had developed new technologies that the Empire had never seen. "All units report ready, General," said his aide. "The fleet is in position. Ground forces are prepared. Special operations teams are standing by." Taemin nodded. "And our alien allies?" "Ready and waiting for the signal. They have been supplied with our latest weapons and training. Many are eager for revenge against the Empire." The general smiled. The Empire thought they were facing just humanity. They had no idea that every species the Empire had conquered was now secretly armed and trained by human forces. When the fighting started, the Empire would face not just human ships and soldiers, but rebels from across their own territory. 72 hours, Taemin said quietly. "After all these years of preparation, we finally get to show them what we can do." In the depths of space, hidden behind asteroids and gas clouds, massive human fleets waited in silence. Their ships were unlike anything the Empire had ever seen. Human engineers had taken the best technology from every species they had encountered and made it better. Human scientists had solved problems that had puzzled alien minds for centuries. Human workers had built weapons that could crack planets and shields that could stop stars. The countdown had begun. In 72 hours, the galaxy would discover that humanity was no longer the weak species that had once begged for mercy. They had learned from every defeat. They had grown stronger with every loss. They had prepared for this day with the patience and determination that made humans different from every other species in the galaxy. The Empire had 72 hours to make the right choice, but deep down, every human knew they would not choose wisely. The Empire was too proud, too certain of their own power. They would ignore the warning, just as they had ignored all the previous warnings, and when they did, they would learn why humans had always been the most dangerous predators on their home world. They would learn what it meant to face a species that never forgot and never forgave. They would learn that humanity's greatest strength was not their technology or their weapons. It was their ability to wait, to plan, and to strike when their enemies least expected it. General Taemin Park walked through the underground corridors of the hidden base beneath Seoul. The walls were lined with steel and concrete, built to withstand anything the Empire might throw at Earth. But Taemin knew that if the Empire ever found this place, the real war would already be lost. Everything humanity had worked for depended on keeping their true strength hidden until the right moment. He stopped at a massive blast door marked with warning signs in 12 different languages. His hand touched the scanner, and the door slid, open with a soft hiss. Beyond it lay humanity's greatest secret, the Devour Protocol. Dr. Yoonji Han looked up from her workstation as he entered. Around her, hundreds of scientists worked at computer terminals and testing equipment. Holographic displays showed ship designs, weapon specifications, and battle plans that had taken years to develop. "General," Yoonji said, her voice tired but excited. "We are ready. All systems have been tested and retested. Our ships are better than anything the Empire has ever built." Taemin looked at the main display, which showed a three-dimensional image of a human battleship. It looked similar to Imperial designs, but he knew that was intentional. Humanity had learned long ago that the best surprise was one that looked familiar until it was too late. "Tell me about the improvements," he said. Yoonji smiled and gestured to the display. The ship image changed, showing its internal systems. "We started with captured Imperial technology, but we made it better in every way. Their engines are powerful, but ours are twice as fast. Their weapons can destroy cities, but ours can crack moons. Their shields can stop most attacks, but ours can absorb energy and redirect it back at the enemy." She touched a control, and the display changed again. "But the real advantage is not in any single system. It is in how all the systems work together. Imperial ships are built by committee, with different alien species contributing different parts. Our ships are designed as complete systems, with every component working perfectly with every other component." Taemin nodded. This was what made humans dangerous. Other species specialized in one thing and did it very well. Humans learned from everyone and made everything work together better than anyone thought possible. "What about production?" he asked. "Hidden shipyards throughout the Outer Rim have been working day and night for 3 years, Yoonji replied. "We now have over 5,000 ships ready for combat, with more being completed every day. The Empire thinks they know where all our shipyards are, but they have only found the ones we wanted them to find." In another part of the base, Commander Dong-hyun Choi sat in a darkened room filled with communication equipment. Screens around him showed dozens of different alien worlds, each one occupied by Imperial forces. To anyone watching, it would look like normal Imperial communications traffic. But hidden in the data streams were messages to and from human agents across the galaxy. Dong-hyun touched his earpiece as a new message came in. The voice spoke in the clicking language of the Zephyrian species, but the words were actually from a human agent pretending to be a loyal Imperial citizen. "Package delivery confirmed on schedule," the voice said. "Local population very interested in the merchandise." Dong-hyun smiled. That meant another shipment of human weapons had reached the resistance fighters on Zephyr Prime. For 2 years, human ships disguised as Imperial cargo vessels had been secretly arming rebel groups across the galaxy. The Empire thought these groups were small and harmless. They had no idea that millions of aliens now carried human weapons and waited for the signal to attack. He opened another channel, this one to the mining world of Kepler-7. The message came from Jinho Park, a human who had been captured 5 years ago and forced to work in the Empire's uranium mines. To the Imperial Guards, Jinho was just another slave, broken by years of hard labor. They did not know that he was actually a Special Forces officer who had volunteered for the mission. Mining operations proceeding normally, Jinho's voice said in the tired tone of a defeated prisoner. No unusual activities to report. But Dong Hyun heard the hidden meaning. Jinho and the other prisoners had taken control of the mine's security systems. When the time came, they would turn the Empire's own mining equipment into weapons. The uranium that was supposed to fuel Imperial ships would instead fuel the rebellion. Across the room, Lieutenant Mi Young-song monitored Imperial fleet movements. Her screens showed the positions of every major Imperial ship within 50 light-years of human space. The information came from both human intelligence networks and from the Empire's own communication systems, which human hackers had been quietly infiltrating for years. "Commander," she called out, "we are seeing increased Imperial activity near the Rigel system. 3 battle groups are moving toward human colonies there." Dong Hyun studied the tactical display. "Expected response," he said. "They want to make a show of force before the deadline expires. Signal our ships in that area to maintain their current positions, but be ready to move quickly." "Yes, sir. Should we warn the colonies?" "No need. The civilians were evacuated months ago. What the Empire will find there are automated defense systems and some very unpleasant surprises." Mi-young looked puzzled. "Sir, if the colonies are empty, why not tell the Empire? It might prevent unnecessary fighting." Dong Hyun turned to look at her. "Lieutenant, what is the most important rule of warfare? Never let the enemy know your true capabilities until you are ready to use them," she replied. "Exactly. The Empire thinks they are attacking helpless human colonies. When they discover that our helpless colonies can defend themselves better than most Imperial military bases, they will start to understand what they are really facing." Meanwhile, on the other side of the galaxy, Captain Bo-Ram Lee sat in her office in the Imperial Intelligence Center. Around her, Imperial officers worked frantically to analyze the human threat. They pulled up files on human military capabilities, studied reports from previous conflicts, and tried to determine if humanity posed any real danger to the Empire. Bo-Ram listened to their discussions and quietly corrected the information in the computer systems. When an officer looked up human ship production, the computer showed numbers that were 10 times smaller than reality. When another officer checked human military bases, the computer showed only the ones that humanity wanted the Empire to know about. "Captain Lee," called out her supervisor, a tall alien with purple skin and multiple eyes. "You have studied human psychology. What is your assessment of their threat?" Bo-Ram stood and walked to the main display, which showed what the Empire believed to be the complete human fleet. She had to be careful here. If she seemed too dismissive, her supervisor might become suspicious. If she seemed too concerned, he might recommend taking the human threat seriously. "Humans are emotional creatures," she said, using the tone she had practiced for years. "They make threats when they are afraid. This message is probably just an attempt to make us back down without fighting. Their actual military capabilities are limited. But they have been building ships and weapons, another officer pointed out. Boram nodded. Yes, but quantity is not the same as quality. Human technology is based on captured Imperial equipment. At best, their ships might be equal to our oldest designs. More likely, they are inferior copies that will break down in actual combat. Her supervisor seemed satisfied. Continue monitoring their communications, he ordered. If they are planning any actual military action, we need to know about it. Boram returned to her station and continued her work. She monitored human communications, just as she had been ordered. But the reports she wrote bore little resemblance to what she actually observed. According to her official analysis, humanity was unprepared for war and would likely surrender as soon as they faced serious Imperial resistance. The truth was very different. The communications she intercepted showed a level of military coordination that impressed even her. Human forces across the galaxy moved with perfect timing, as if controlled by a single mind. Supply lines that had taken years to establish were now operating at peak efficiency. Weapons that had been designed in secret were now being distributed to both human forces and alien resistance groups. But perhaps most impressive was the discipline she observed in human agents throughout Imperial territory. For years, these agents had endured slavery, torture, and humiliation while maintaining their cover identities. Now, with war only hours away, they remained calm and focused on their missions. Each one knew that their success or failure could determine the fate of their entire species. As the hours passed, tension grew throughout the galaxy. Imperial fleets moved into position to crush what they expected to be a minor human rebellion. Human forces made final preparations for a war that would reshape the galaxy. And in hidden bases and secret meeting places, the oppressed peoples of 100 worlds got ready to strike back at their Imperial masters. The Empire's 72 hours were almost up. Soon they would discover that humanity's final warning had not been a bluff. It had been a promise. The 72 hours passed like a slow nightmare for those who knew what was coming. On Imperial worlds, life continued as normal. Citizens went to work, children attended school, and soldiers performed their duties. The Empire's propaganda broadcasts assured everyone that the human threat was nothing to worry about. Soon, the Imperial fleet would crush this minor rebellion and remind the galaxy why the Empire was supreme. In the Grand Council chamber of the Imperial capital, Chancellor Vextar stood before a massive holographic display showing the Empire's military response. 2,000 of their finest ships had been assembled under the command of Admiral Corthan, one of the Empire's most experienced commanders. It was the largest fleet the Empire had assembled in 50 years. Admiral, Vextar addressed the hologram of the reptilian fleet commander. You understand your mission? Perfectly, Chancellor, Corthan replied, his voice filled with confidence. We will jump to Earth's system and demand their immediate surrender. When they refuse, as they surely will, we will demonstrate the Empire's power by destroying their orbital stations and military bases. The survivors will beg for mercy within hours. The other council members nodded approvingly. This was how the Empire had always dealt with rebellious species, a show of overwhelming force followed by generous terms for surrender. Most species chose survival over pride. Those that did not choose wisely were destroyed as examples to others. Remember, Vextar added, we want some humans left alive to serve as workers and soldiers. They have shown useful intelligence and adaptability, but make sure they understand the price of defying the Empire. It will be done, Chancellor, Corthan said. The hologram flickered and disappeared as the connection ended. What none of them knew was that Colonel Jae-sung-oh and his team had been preparing for this moment for 3 years. They had infiltrated Imperial supply lines, communication networks, and even military bases. As elite human operatives, they had spent years learning Imperial technology and finding its weaknesses. When Admiral Corthan's fleet began its journey toward Earth, they thought they were following the most secure hyperspace routes in the galaxy. Their navigation computers showed clear paths through space, with no obstacles or dangers. Their communication systems worked perfectly, allowing constant contact between ships and with Imperial command. But Jae-sung's team had been busy. Tiny devices, no larger than coins, had been attached to Imperial ships during routine maintenance stops. These devices looked like normal ship components, but they slowly corrupted navigation data and communication signals. The changes were so small that Imperial technicians never noticed them. 3 hours into their journey, Admiral Corthan received the first reports of problems. "Sir," his navigation officer reported, "we are detecting minor course corrections in several ships. Nothing dangerous, but the computers are showing slightly different positions than expected." Corthan waved dismissively. "Minor calibration issues. Have the technical teams check their instruments when we reach Earth." But the problems grew worse as the journey continued. Ships began reporting that their star charts did not match what they were seeing. Communication delays appeared between vessels that should have been in constant contact. Most troubling of all, long-range sensors began showing strange readings. From the direction of Earth. "Admiral," the sensor operator called out, "I am detecting unusual energy signatures from the human system. The readings do not match any known Imperial technology." "Explain," Corthan ordered, moving to the sensor. "Station, the energy levels are very high, sir. Much higher than our intelligence report suggested humans were capable of producing. And the patterns are unfamiliar. It is almost as if they are using technology we have never seen before." Corthan studied the display with growing concern. According to Imperial intelligence, humans had only basic space technology. Their ships were supposed to be primitive copies of Imperial designs, but these sensor readings suggested something very different. "Are you certain these readings are accurate?" he asked. "I have run diagnostics twice, sir. The equipment is functioning normally. These readings are real." Admiral Corthan returned to his command chair and opened a communication channel to the Imperial capital. But instead of the clear signal he expected, he heard only static and distorted voices. The communication officer tried different frequencies and backup systems, but the result was the same. "Sir, our long-range communications are experiencing severe interference. I cannot establish a clear connection to Imperial command." "How is that possible? We are using the most advanced communication technology in the galaxy." "I do not know, sir. The interference appears to be coming from multiple sources. It is almost as if someone is deliberately jamming our signals." As the fleet continued toward Earth, more problems appeared. Ships reported navigation errors that sent them slightly off course. Weapon systems experienced mysterious malfunctions during routine tests. Even the artificial gravity systems began fluctuating in ways that made crew members sick and confused. Meanwhile, on worlds throughout the Empire, resistance groups received the signal they had been waiting for. The message was simple. 3 musical notes played on Imperial communication systems. To Imperial listeners, it sounded like a minor technical glitch, but to the trained resistance fighters, it meant Operation Liberation has begun. On the mining world of Proxima 7, human prisoners who had worked in the uranium mines for years suddenly revealed their true nature. Guards who thought they were watching broken slaves found themselves facing trained soldiers who knew every inch of the mining complex. Within hours, the Resistance controlled the planet's primary source of weapons-grade uranium. On the trade station at Vega 9, human merchants who had been buying and selling goods for years activated hidden weapons caches. Imperial security forces found themselves fighting enemies who knew the station's layout better than they did. Before the day was over, the rebellion controlled the station's massive cargo bays filled with supplies intended for Imperial military bases. Similar uprisings erupted across the galaxy. The Empire's communication networks carried confused reports of rebel attacks, equipment failures, and coordination problems. But Imperial command centers found themselves unable to respond effectively because their own systems were experiencing mysterious malfunctions. Back on Admiral Corthan's flagship, the situation continued to deteriorate. The fleet's formation had become scattered as individual ships struggled with navigation problems. Several vessels had fallen behind due to engine malfunctions that Imperial engineers could not explain or fix. "Sir," the tactical officer reported, "we are now 12 hours behind schedule. At this rate, we will not reach Earth for another 2 days." Corthan's frustration was visible. "What about the other fleets? Have they reported similar problems?" "That is the strange thing, sir. According to our records, other Imperial fleets are operating normally. These malfunctions seem to be affecting only ships assigned to this mission." The Admiral stared at the tactical display, studying the scattered positions of his fleet. A terrible suspicion was beginning to form in his mind. These were not random equipment failures. They were too numerous, too well-timed, and too specific to ships heading toward human space. "Communications officer," he ordered, "send a message to Imperial intelligence. Tell them we suspect human sabotage of our fleet. Request immediate technical support and backup from the nearest Imperial base." But the message never reached its destination. Deep in space, human ships equipped with advanced jamming technology intercepted and scrambled all Imperial communications related to the attack on Earth. To Imperial command, Admiral Corthan's fleet had simply gone silent, which was not unusual for fleets traveling through hyperspace. As his fleet struggled with increasingly serious problems, Corthan began to understand that he was not leading a triumphant attack on a primitive species. He was walking into a trap that had been years in the making. The humans had not waited passively for the Empire to attack them. They had been preparing, planning, and positioning themselves for this exact moment. For the first time in his long military career, Admiral Corthan felt genuine fear. The Empire had always won through superior technology and overwhelming numbers. But what if their enemy had better technology? What if their enemy had been studying Imperial tactics and preparing countermeasures for every strategy the Empire might use? As the fleet finally approached the outer edges of the human solar system, Corthan's worst fears were confirmed. The sensor readings that had puzzled his crew for days suddenly made sense. Earth was not defended by primitive human technology. It was surrounded by energy signatures that exceeded anything in the Imperial arsenal. The humans had not been building copies of Imperial ships. They had been building something entirely new, something that would soon teach the Empire what it truly meant to face a species that had learned from every defeat and prepared for every possibility. Admiral Corthan's mighty fleet was about to discover that the hunters had become the hunted. Admiral Corthan's fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the coordinates that should have brought them to Earth's solar system. What they found instead was empty space and silence. The navigation computers insisted they were in the right location, but the star charts showed nothing but distant stars and cosmic dust. "Navigation error," Corthan muttered. but his voice carried no conviction. Too many things had gone wrong during this mission for this to be another simple mistake. "Sir," the sensor operator called out, "I am detecting a single small vessel directly ahead. It appears to be waiting for us." Corthan looked at the main screen as the image resolved. A small human ship, no larger than a shuttle, hung motionless, in space. It made no attempt to flee or hide. It simply waited, as if it had been expecting them. "Open a communication channel," Corthan ordered. The screen flickered, and the image of a human woman appeared. She wore the uniform of a ship captain, and her expression was calm and confident. Captain Sujin Park looked directly at Admirals Corthan as she spoke. "Admiral Corthan of the Imperial Fleet," she said. "I am Captain Sujin Park of the Human Defense Force. I have a message for you." Corthan leaned forward in his command chair. "Human, you are vastly outnumbered. Surrender now, and your death will be quick." Sujin smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "Admiral, you should have listened to our warning. You should have taken our offer of peace. Instead, you chose war. Now you will learn what war with humanity really means." She paused, looking directly into the camera. "You came here expecting to find a primitive species cowering in fear. You came here with overwhelming force, confident in your superiority. You are about to discover that you understand nothing about humanity." "Enough talk," Corthan snarled. "All ships, target that vessel and destroy it." But as his weapons officers prepared to fire, something impossible happened. The space around the Imperial fleet began to shimmer and distort. What had appeared to be empty space suddenly revealed itself to be filled with massive human ships, their cloaking systems deactivating simultaneously. Corthan's 2,000 ships found themselves surrounded by over 3,000 human vessels. But these were not the primitive copies of Imperial technology that intelligence reports had described. These ships were larger, sleeker, and more advanced than anything in the Imperial arsenal. "Impossible," Corthan whispered. "Our sensors should have detected them. No cloaking technology can hide ships that large." Lieutenant Yoon-Soo Kim, commander of the human boarding vessel Incheon Strike, watched the Imperial fleet through his ship's advanced sensors. He had been waiting for this moment for 3 years, ever since his sister had been killed in an Imperial raid on the colony world of New Busan. "All boarding teams prepare for capture operations," he announced over the communication system. "Remember, we want these ships intact. The Empire is about to provide us with a very generous donation to our fleet." The battle that followed was unlike anything the Empire had ever experienced. Imperial ships opened fire with their most powerful weapons, expecting to destroy the human vessels quickly. Instead, their energy beams were absorbed by human shields that seemed to grow stronger under attack. Worse, the absorbed energy was somehow redirected back at the Imperial ships. "Sir," the weapons officer reported to Admiral Corthan, "our weapons are not penetrating their shields. The energy appears to be feeding back into their defensive systems." "Impossible. Switch to kinetic weapons. Nothing can absorb solid projectiles." But the human ships moved with impossible grace and speed. Imperial targeting computers designed to track and destroy the fastest ships in the galaxy could not lock onto the human vessels. They darted between Imperial ships like dancers, striking with precision at engines, weapons, and communication systems. Within the first hour of battle, a quarter of the Imperial fleet had been disabled. The human ships did not destroy their targets. Instead, they used weapons that seemed designed specifically to shut down Imperial technology. Ships found their engines dead, their weapons offline, and their life support systems running on emergency power. They are not trying to kill us, Admiral Corthan realized with growing horror. They are capturing us. The realization was confirmed when boarding pods began attaching to disabled Imperial ships. Human soldiers, wearing armor that made them look like metallic demons, cut through Imperial hull plating as if it were paper. They moved through ship corridors with deadly efficiency, stunning Imperial crew members instead of killing them. Lieutenant Yoon-Soo Kim led the assault on Admiral Corthan's flagship. His team cut through 3 decks of the massive ship, facing minimal resistance from Imperial Marines who had never encountered human military technology. When they reached the bridge, they found the Admiral and his senior officers huddled around their command stations. "Admiral Corthan," Yoon-Soo said through his armor's external speakers, "by order of the Human Defense Force, I am placing you under arrest for crimes against humanity. Your ship and crew are now property of the Terran Federation." Corthan drew his sidearm, a plasma weapon that could cut through most armor. He fired directly at Yoon-Soo's chest. The plasma beam struck the human's armor and was absorbed without leaving a mark. "Imperial plasma technology," Yoon-Soo observed calmly. "We captured examples of those weapons years ago. Our armor is specifically designed to counter them. Would you like to try again, or shall we proceed with your surrender?" The Admiral dropped his weapon. Around the bridge, his officers stared in shock at the human soldiers. These were not the primitive beings they had been told to expect. These were warriors equipped with technology that made Imperial equipment look like toys. "How?" Corthan asked. "How did you develop such advanced technology so quickly? Our intelligence said you were decades behind us." Yoon-Soo removed his helmet, revealing a young human face marked by determination and controlled anger. "Your intelligence was wrong about many things, Admiral. You see, humans have a special talent. We learn from our enemies. Every Imperial ship you sent against us, every weapon you used, every tactic you tried, we studied it all. We took your technology and made it better." He gestured to his armor and weapons. "This armor incorporates defensive systems from 12 different species that your empire conquered. These weapons combine the best features of technology from 8 different worlds. Our ships use engine designs improved from 6 different alien races, all of them former victims of Imperial expansion." Admiral Corthan felt the weight of realization settling on him. "You have been preparing for this war for years." "Decades," Yoon-Soo corrected. "Every human who was captured, every colony that was attacked, every family that was destroyed, they all became part of our preparation. We learned from every defeat. We grew stronger from every loss. And we never, ever forgot what the Empire did to us." Throughout the fleet, similar scenes were playing out. Imperial ships that had begun. The day expecting easy victory found themselves captured and their crews taken prisoner. The humans did not torture or kill their captives. Instead, they processed them efficiently, separating military personnel from civilians, identifying officers who might have valuable information, and treating wounded Imperial soldiers with the same care they gave their own. But perhaps most disturbing to the Imperial crews was the humans' attitude. They showed no anger, no desire for revenge, no satisfaction at their victory. They approached the capture of the Imperial fleet like a complex engineering problem that needed to be solved efficiently. It was the calm professionalism of a species that had planned for this moment and was now executing their plan perfectly. Captain Soo-Jin Park's small ship approached Admiral Corthan's captured flagship. Over the communication system, her voice reached every Imperial ship in the fleet. "Imperial forces," she announced. "Your fleet has been captured. Your crews will be treated according to the standards of civilized warfare. Those of you who choose to cooperate will find that humanity can be generous to former enemies who become allies. Those who choose to resist will discover that humanity can be very creative in dealing with problems. She paused, letting her words sink in. You came here to demonstrate imperial power. Instead, you have provided us with 2,000 new ships and valuable intelligence about imperial capabilities. Your empire sent you here to crush humanity. Instead, you have just made humanity significantly stronger. Admiral Corthan, now a prisoner aboard his own ship, realized the true scope of the disaster. The Empire had not just lost a fleet. They had armed their greatest enemy with their own weapons and ships. Worse, they had revealed imperial tactics, technology, and military thinking to opponents who would use that knowledge against them. The hunters had indeed become the hunted, but more than that, they had become the prey of a species that did not simply defeat their enemies. They absorbed them, learned from them, and made them part of their own growing strength. The Empire was about to learn what it meant to face an enemy that grew stronger with every battle. The news of Admiral Corthan's defeat spread through the Imperial communication networks like wildfire, but what truly terrified Imperial Command was not the loss of a single fleet. It was the coordinated uprisings that erupted simultaneously across the galaxy, as if triggered by the victory at Earth. General Wanho Kong stood on the observation deck of the human cruiser New Seoul as it approached Proxima 7. Below them, the industrial world that had been a cornerstone of Imperial weapons. Production was now in full rebellion. The planet's surface glowed with the fires of revolution as human prisoners and alien workers turned the Empire's own factories against their masters. "Signal from the surface, General," reported his communications officer. Jin-Ho Park confirms that all major production facilities are under rebel control. Imperial garrison forces have surrendered or retreated to their orbital stations. Won-Ho nodded with satisfaction. Jin-Ho had spent 5 years working as a slave in the Empire's uranium mines, gathering intelligence and preparing for this moment. Now those same mines were producing fuel for human ships instead of Imperial ones. "Status of the orbital defenses?" Won-Ho asked. 3 Imperial battle stations remain active. They are refusing surrender demands and have opened fire on any ship that approaches the planet. Won-Ho smiled grimly. The Imperial commanders probably thought they could wait for reinforcements while bombarding the rebel-controlled surface from orbit. They had no idea what humanity had planned for them. "Signal the Daegu Squadron," he ordered. "Time to show them our new toys." High above Proxima 7, the commanders of the Imperial orbital stations watched in confusion as human ships approached their positions. The human vessels looked familiar. They appeared to be modified Imperial designs, probably inferior copies that would be easy to destroy. Commander Vexilon of the primary battle station opened fire with the station's main weapons. The massive energy beam that could vaporize a city struck the lead human ship directly, but instead of exploding, the human vessel absorbed the energy and continued its approach. "Impossible," Vexilon muttered. "Nothing can withstand a direct hit from our primary cannon." His weapons officer looked up from his station with a confused expression. "Sir, the human ship is somehow storing the energy we hit it with. Our sensors show it is now redirecting that energy to its own weapon systems." Before Vexilon could respond, the human ship fired back. But it was not using human weapons. It was using Imperial energy, magnified and focused through human technology. The beam that struck the orbital station was twice as powerful as anything the station could produce. "Shields down to 60%. the defense officer reported. "Sir, they are using our own weapons against us, but somehow making them stronger." Captain Chan-Woo Lee commanded the human assault on the orbital stations from his ship, the Busan Revenge. His vessel was one of the new human Imperial hybrid designs, incorporating the best features of captured Imperial technology with human improvements. "Target the second station," he ordered. "Weapons, prepare the gravity disruptor." The gravity disruptor was one of humanity's most terrifying new weapons. Imperial scientists had developed primitive gravity manipulation technology, but had never been able to make it practical for warfare. Human engineers had taken the basic Imperial research and turned it into a weapon that could tear apart any structure from the inside. The second orbital station simply came apart as its own gravity field was turned against it. Metal beams twisted into impossible shapes. Crew members found themselves pressed against walls as the artificial gravity fluctuated wildly. Within minutes, the massive structure broke into pieces that scattered across space. "Station 2 has been destroyed," reported Chan-Woo's tactical officer. "Station 3 is requesting permission to surrender." "Granted," Chan-Woo replied. "Send boarding teams to secure it. We can always use another orbital platform." But the real victory was not happening in space. It was occurring across the galaxy as humanity revealed the true scope of their preparation. For years, human agents had been infiltrating Imperial society, gathering intelligence, and positioning themselves for this moment. Commander Hae-Jin Yu coordinated the galactic uprising from the command center aboard the massive human ship Harmony of Soul. Around her, hundreds of communication stations maintained contact with human forces and allied rebels across thousands of light years. What the Empire was discovering, to their horror, was that humanity fought with perfect coordination across impossible distances. Every human force, from single-agent infiltration teams to massive battle fleets, moved in perfect synchronization as if controlled by a single mind. "Status report," Hae-Jin called out. "Kepler mining complex secured," came the first response. 5 million tons of processed metals now under human control." "Vega trade station captured," reported another voice. "Imperial supply convoy intercepted and redirected to human forces." "Centauri shipyard liberated," announced a third officer. "Local alien workers have joined the rebellion and are now producing ships for our fleet." But perhaps most important was the report from the Rigel system. "Rigel communication hub captured intact," the communications officer announced. "We now have access to the Empire's primary data networks." Hae-Jin allowed herself a small smile. The Rigel hub processed communication, traffic for over 200 Imperial worlds. With access to those networks, humanity could monitor Imperial military movements, intercept strategic plans, and coordinate attacks with perfect timing. "Signal all units," she ordered. "Phase 2 is now authorized. Begin liberation operations." On all primary targets, the Empire's worst nightmare was becoming reality. Not only were humans more technologically advanced than expected, but they were also perfectly coordinated across the galaxy. Every Imperial response was anticipated and countered. Every Imperial strength was turned into a weakness. Every Imperial advantage was somehow neutralized or stolen. On the Imperial capital world, Chancellor Vextar stared at the holographic display showing rebel activities across the galaxy. Red markers indicated human attacks, lost communications with Imperial bases, or successful rebel operations. In the past 6 hours, over 40 major Imperial installations had fallen to human forces or allied rebels. "How is this possible?" he demanded of his military advisors. We have 2 million ships spread across the galaxy. How can one species coordinate such widespread attacks? General Thex Ron, his senior military commander, studied the tactical reports with growing alarm. Chancellor, the human attacks are not random. They are targeting specific strategic assets, communication hubs, supply depots, weapons factories, and fuel production facilities. It is as if they have detailed intelligence about our entire military infrastructure. That is impossible. Our security protocols are the best in the galaxy. Perhaps our security protocols are not as good as we believed, Thexran replied grimly. Look at these attack patterns. The humans are not just stealing our resources. They are systematically dismantling our ability to wage war. Vextar examined the display more closely. The human attacks were indeed following a precise pattern. First, they captured communication facilities, cutting off Imperial forces from Central Command. Then they seized supply lines, preventing Imperial ships from refueling or rearming. Finally, they attacked isolated Imperial bases that could no longer call for help or receive reinforcements. It is brilliant, he admitted reluctantly. They are not trying to destroy our military. They are trying to capture it. Exactly, Chancellor. Every ship they capture becomes part of their fleet. Every base they take becomes a human stronghold. Every weapon they steal makes them stronger while making us weaker. The scope of the disaster was becoming clear. The Empire was not losing a war. It was being systematically absorbed by an enemy that grew stronger with every victory. Imperial technology, Imperial resources, even Imperial personnel were being turned against the Empire itself. Reports continued to flow in from across the galaxy. The asteroid mining operation at Wolf 359 had been captured by human forces, along with its massive industrial equipment. The weapons research facility at Alpha Centauri had fallen to a combined human-alien assault, and its advanced prototypes were now in human hands. The fuel depot at Barnard Star had been seized by rebels who had been working there as laborers for years. Most disturbing of all were the reports of Imperial personnel joining the human cause. Alien species that had been conquered by the Empire were eagerly switching sides, bringing their knowledge and skills to the rebellion. Even some Imperial citizens were beginning to question whether the Empire they served was worth defending. Chancellor, Thexran said quietly, we need to consider the possibility that we cannot win this war through conventional means. The humans are not fighting like any enemy we have faced before. They are not trying to conquer territory. They are trying to conquer us. Vextar turned away from the display, his mind racing through possibilities. The Empire had faced rebellions before, but never like this. Previous enemies had fought with passion and courage, but little coordination. They had been defeated through superior Imperial organization and technolo, but humanity was different. They fought with the same passion and courage as other rebels, but they also possessed superior organization and technology. They had learned from every species. Dr. Naray Kim walked through the captured Imperial research facility on Kepler Prime, her tablet recording everything she observed. Around her, teams of human scientists worked alongside former Imperial researchers who had chosen to join the human cause rather than face imprisonment as war criminals. Fascinating, she murmured as she examined an Imperial weapons prototype. They were trying to develop plasma that could cut through any known material, but they never considered using quantum field manipulation to stabilize the plasma stream. Her assistant, Dr. Kyung-Soo Han, looked up from a captured Imperial computer terminal. Dr. Kim, you need to see this. The Imperial files contain research data from over 300 different species. They have been stealing and hoarding scientific knowledge for centuries. Narration smiled with genuine pleasure. Perfect. We can reverse engineer all of it, improve upon their designs, and incorporate the best features into our own technology. How long will it take? Based on our past performance, we should have improved versions of their best weapons within 2 weeks. Their most advanced ships can probably be duplicated and enhanced within a month. This was humanity's most terrifying capability, and the Empire was finally beginning to understand it. Humans did not just capture enemy technology, they absorbed it, improved it, and turned it against its creators with shocking speed. What had taken the Empire centuries to develop, humans could master and enhance in a matter of days. Major Seong-ho Park stood in the central plaza of New Rigel, the former imperial colony that had surrendered without firing a shot when human forces arrived. Around him, former imperial citizens watched nervously as human soldiers established control over their world. But these were not the brutal occupiers they had expected. Human soldiers were polite and professional. They protected local civilians from looters and maintained essential services. Most surprising of all, they actually seemed to be improving conditions on the planet. "Attention, citizens of New Rigel," Seong-ho announced through the planetary communication system. "I am Major Seong-ho Park of the Human Liberation Forces. You are now under human protection. We offer you a choice that the Empire never gave you. Join us willingly or leave peacefully." He paused, looking at the crowd of aliens who had gathered to hear his announcement. "Those who choose to join the Terran Federation will be treated as equal citizens. You will receive human technology, human education, and human protection. Your skills and knowledge will be valued and rewarded. Your cultures and traditions will be respected and preserved." A Zolonian merchant stepped forward from the crowd. His blue skin was marked with the traditional tattoos of his species, and his multiple arms gestured nervously as he spoke. "What about those who do not wish to join your federation?" "You will be transported safely to any neutral world of your choosing," Seong-ho replied. "We will provide transportation and enough resources to start new lives. We are not the Empire. We do not force anyone to serve us against their will," the crowd murmured with surprise. This was completely different from how the Empire had operated. When the Empire conquered a world, the choice was simple: serve or die. The humans were offering something that seemed impossible: genuine freedom to choose. Over the following days, the results of human policy became clear. Over 90% of the planet's population chose to join the Terran Federation. They had lived under imperial rule for decades and had no desire to return to it. But more importantly, they brought their knowledge, skills, and resources to the human cause. The Zolonian merchants provided detailed information about imperial trade routes and supply chains. The Andromedan engineers shared advanced techniques for ship construction and maintenance. The Rigelian farmers contributed new methods for food production that could feed human armies across the galaxy, but perhaps most valuable were the former Imperial soldiers who chose to switch sides. These aliens brought detailed knowledge of Imperial military tactics, defensive systems, and weak points. They knew where the Empire was strong and where it was vulnerable. Captain Chan-Woo Lee observed this process from his position as military governor of the captured Proxima system. In just 2 weeks, human-controlled worlds had become more productive and prosperous than they had ever been under imperial rule. The former imperial citizens were not just cooperating with their new human leaders. They were actively working to make their worlds better. "Sir," his aide reported, "production figures for this month are in. The Proxima shipyards are now producing 30% more vessels than they did under Imperial management. The mining operations have increased output by 40%, and the research facilities are developing new technologies at twice their previous rate. Chan Wu was not surprised. Humans had learned that the best way to control a population was not through fear, but through genuine improvement of their lives. When people saw that human rule made their lives better, they became willing partners rather than reluctant subjects. "What about military recruitment?" he asked. "Excellent, sir. Over 10,000 former Imperial soldiers have requested to join human forces. They bring detailed knowledge of Imperial weapons, tactics, and defensive systems. Our intelligence officers are learning more about Imperial capabilities every day. This was the true meaning of humanity's promise to devour their enemies. They did not simply destroy those who opposed them. They absorbed them, learned from them, and made them part of the growing human civilization. Every Imperial world that fell to human forces became a human world, contributing its resources and knowledge to the war effort." Dr. Eun Ji Han stood in the main laboratory of the captured Imperial Research Station at Wolf 359. Around her, human and alien scientists worked together on projects that would have been impossible under the Empire's rigid hierarchy. The Empire had always segregated different species, believing that competition between them would drive innovation. But humans had discovered that cooperation worked better than competition. When brilliant minds from different species worked together, sharing knowledge and techniques, they could solve problems that no single species could handle alone. Dr. Han called out her Centaurian colleague, Dr. Vexnaz. "The new shield generator is ready for testing. By combining human energy manipulation with Centaurian crystal technology, we have created defensive systems that are 70% more efficient than the best Imperial designs." Yunji smiled as she examined the test results. "Excellent work. How long before we can install these on our entire fleet?" "Production can begin immediately. We have enough raw materials from the captured mining operations to equip 5,000 ships within a month." This was how humanity grew stronger with every victory. They did not just capture enemy resources. They improved upon them, enhanced them, and turned them into tools that were better than anything their enemies possessed. The Empire's own technology was being used to create weapons and defenses that the Empire could not match. Meanwhile, in the depths of space, human scout ships monitored Imperial fleet movements using captured Imperial communication technology. The irony was perfect. The Empire's own surveillance networks were now spying on Imperial forces and reporting their activities to human commanders. Commander He-Jin Yu studied the intelligence reports flowing in from across the galaxy. The picture they painted was clear. The Empire was losing this war not through military defeat, but through systematic absorption. Every resource they lost made the humans stronger. Every ship they lost became a human ship. Every world they lost became a human world. "Status report on assimilation operations," she requested. "Proceeding ahead of schedule," her aide reported. 73 former Imperial worlds have now joined the Terran Federation. Total human fleet strength has increased by 400% since the war began. Industrial capacity is up 600%. Research and development capabilities have increased by over 800%. Hai-Jin nodded with satisfaction. "And Imperial capabilities?" "Declining rapidly. They have lost approximately 60% of their industrial base, 40% of their fleet, and over half of their communication networks. More importantly, they are losing their best people. Imperial citizens are defecting to human forces at an increasing rate. The numbers told the story of a civilization in collapse, but it was not collapsing due to external attack. It was being systematically dismantled and absorbed by an enemy that made everything it touched better than it had been before. Perhaps most disturbing to the remaining imperial leaders was the attitude of their own people. Imperial propaganda had always taught that other species were inferior and that imperial rule was necessary for galactic order. But when those same species joined human forces and began producing better technology, better art, and better living conditions than they had ever achieved under the Empire, the propaganda became obviously false. Reports reached the imperial capital of former imperial colonies that were now thriving under human rule. Worlds that had been barely habitable under imperial management were now garden planets where multiple species lived and worked together in harmony. Technologies that the Empire had failed to develop for centuries were being perfected by human-led research teams in a matter of weeks. The Empire was not just losing territory and resources, it was losing the loyalty. Chancellor Vextar stood in the war room of the Imperial Palace, staring at the holographic display that showed the last remnants of his once mighty empire. What had begun as 2 million ships spread across the galaxy had been reduced to barely 300,000 vessels, most of them old and poorly maintained. The shining worlds that had once paid tribute to imperial glory were now either independent or under human control. "General Thexran," he said without turning around, "give me the final count." The old reptilian general consulted his data tablet with weary eyes. 547 ships remain in the core systems, Chancellor. The planetary defense grid is still operational, though many stations are reporting equipment failures. Ground forces number approximately 2 million soldiers, but morale is problematic. Vextar finally turned to face his senior staff. Around the table sat the surviving leaders of an empire that had once ruled the galaxy. Now they looked like refugees planning a desperate last stand. What about reinforcements from the outer territories? None. "Are coming, Chancellor," replied Admiral Kesavan, her voice barely above a whisper. "The remaining outer fleets have either been captured, destroyed, or—" She paused, struggling with the words, "have declared independence and joined local human forces." The silence in the room was deafening. The empire that had conquered the galaxy through superior organization and technology was being defeated by those same advantages turned against them. Every imperial strength had become a weakness in the face of human adaptability and coordination. "Then, we make our stand here," Vextar declared. "At the capital. This is where the empire began, and this is where it will either survive or die with honor." 3 days later, Admiral Kyungmin Nam approached the imperial capital system with what appeared to be a modest human fleet. His force consisted of only 200 ships, a tiny fraction of the massive armadas that had conquered most of the galaxy. To the imperial defenders, it looked like humanity was making a token gesture, perhaps hoping to intimidate the empire into surrender through psychological warfare. They could not have been more wrong. "Admiral Nam," reported Captain Ji-Yun Shin, from her position aboard the tactical coordination vessel, "all Allied fleets are in position and ready to execute the final assault." Kyung-min studied the tactical display with satisfaction. The Empire's defenders saw only his small fleet approaching their capital. They could not see the vast armada hidden throughout the system, using advanced cloaking technology that made human ships invisible to Imperial sensors. But more importantly, they could not see the thousands of ships crewed by former Imperial citizens who had chosen to join the human cause. Every species the Empire had conquered and oppressed was now represented in the Liberation Fleet. Zilonians, Centaurians, Andromedans, Rigelians, and dozens of other species had brought their ships, their knowledge, and their burning desire for revenge against their former masters. "Signal the fleet," Kyung-min ordered. "All ships are authorized to begin the final assault. Remember, we want to minimize casualties among Imperial civilians. Our target is the military command structure, not the innocent people who live on this world." The attack began with surgical precision. Human ships decloaked throughout the Imperial capital system. But instead of opening fire immediately, they broadcast a message on all frequencies. Captain Ji-un Shin's voice reached every Imperial ship, station, and planetary facility. Imperial forces, this is Captain Ji-un Shin of the Terran Liberation Fleet. You are surrounded and outgunned. We offer you the same choice we have offered every Imperial world. Surrender and join us willingly, or resist and face the consequences. She paused, letting her words sink in. Look around you. Your empire is gone. Your allies have abandoned you. Your own people are fighting against you. You can continue this war and die for a cause that no longer exists, or you can help us build something better. The response was immediate and devastating for Imperial morale. Over half of the remaining Imperial fleet immediately signaled their surrender. These were ships crewed by aliens who had been forced to serve the Empire against their will. Given the chance to switch sides, they eagerly joined the human forces. But Chancellor Vextar was not ready to give up. From his command center on the planet's surface, he activated the capital world's massive defensive systems. Energy barriers sprang up around the planet. Orbital weapons platforms began charging their main guns. Underground missile silos opened, revealing planet-killer weapons that could destroy entire fleets. All remaining loyal forces, he broadcast. This is our final stand. Fight with honor for the empire that gave your species purpose and glory. Show these humans that we do not bow to inferior civilizations. The battle that followed was unlike anything in galactic history. It was not just humanity versus the Empire. It was the Empire versus every civilization they had ever wronged, all united under human leadership and armed with superior human technology. Zolonian merchant vessels, converted into warships, struck at Imperial supply lines with intimate knowledge of trade routes and defensive positions. Centaurian engineers used their crystal technology to create weapons that could slice through Imperial armor like paper. Andromedan pilots, flying human-designed fighters, attacked with the desperate courage of people fighting for their freedom. But perhaps most devastating were the former Imperial soldiers who had joined the human cause. They knew every weakness in Imperial defenses, every flaw in Imperial tactics, every secret entrance to Imperial installations. When they led assault teams against their former bases, the results were catastrophic for Imperial resistance. Captain Chan Wu Li commanded one such assault team as they fought their way through the Imperial Palace's defensive systems. With him were soldiers from a dozen different species, all united in their determination to end Imperial rule forever. "The command center is just ahead," reported Sergeant Hai Min Yu, a former Imperial Marine who had defected after witnessing human treatment of prisoners. "Chancellor Vextar is almost certainly inside, along with his senior staff." "Remember," Chan Wu warned his team, "we want them alive if possible. Dead leaders become martyrs. Living leaders can stand trial for their crimes and help us understand Imperial organization." They breached the final door to find Chancellor Vextar and his remaining advisors gathered around a holographic display showing the collapse of their last defenses. The once mighty leader of a galactic empire looked old and defeated, his scaled skin pale with exhaustion and despair. "Chancellor Vextar," Chanwu said formally, "by authority of the Terran Federation and the Alliance of Free Worlds, I place you under arrest for crimes against sentient beings." Vextar looked up at the human captain with something that might have been respect. "You have won, human. Your species has proven remarkably effective at warfare." "We learned from the best teachers," Chanwu replied. "Every species you conquered contributed something to our victory. Your own tactics turned against you. Your own technology improved and used against your forces. Your own people fighting for the freedom you denied them. Around the command center, alien rebels secured Imperial equipment and arrested the surviving Imperial leadership. But there was no celebration, no triumph, no revenge taken against the defeated enemy. The humans and their allies processed their prisoners with the same professional efficiency they had shown throughout the war. "What happens now?" Vexitar asked, as restraints were placed on his arms. "Now you face justice," Chanwu replied. "But not human justice. You will be tried by representatives of every species you oppressed, under laws that protect the rights of all sentient beings. If you are found guilty, your punishment will be determined by those you wronged. And if I am found innocent?" Chanwu's expression was grim but fair. "Then you will be free to go, with our protection if necessary. We are not the Empire, Chancellor. We believe in justice, not revenge." As Imperial resistance crumbled across the capital system, the scope of humanity's final victory became clear. They had not simply defeated the Empire. They had transformed it into something completely different. The rigid hierarchy that had oppressed the galaxy for a millennium was replaced by a voluntary federation where every species had a voice and every world had a choice. The orbital battles ended not with the destruction of Imperial forces, but with their integration into the growing human fleet. Former enemies became allies, former oppressors became contributors to a better galactic civilization. The Empire's own weapons and ships now served the cause of freedom rather than domination. Admiral Kyungmin Nam stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching as the last Imperial resistance positions surrendered. Around him, his crew worked to coordinate the massive logistics of integrating thousands of new ships and millions of new personnel into the Terran Federation. "Sir," reported his communications officer, "we are receiving surrender requests from the last remaining Imperial outposts in 17 different star systems. It appears that news of the capital's fall has convinced them to lay down their arms." Kyungmin nodded. "Accept their surrenders and offer them the same terms we have given everyone else. Freedom to join us, or freedom to leave and start over, somewhere else." The Empire's last stand was over, but unlike the defeats that the Empire had inflicted on, President Sang Min Ko stood at the podium in what had once been the Imperial Senate chamber, looking out at an audience that would have been impossible under the old regime. Representatives from over 300 different species filled the seats that had once been reserved only for Imperial elites. Humans sat beside Zolonians, Centaurians worked with Andromedans, and former Imperial citizens debated policy with former slaves. The chamber itself had been transformed. Where once harsh Imperial symbols had dominated the walls, now there were displays showing the achievements of every member species of the Terran Federation. Art from 100 worlds decorated the space, and the air carried the sounds of dozens of different languages as universal translators allowed perfect communication between all attendees. "Citizens of the Terran Federation," Sang Min began, his words automatically translated into every language in the galaxy. We gather today not as conquerors and conquered, but as partners in building a better future for all sentient beings. The DI applause that followed came from beings whose ancestors had been enemies for millennia, but they applauded not because they were forced to, but because they had seen what cooperation could accomplish when guided by human principles of fairness and inclusion. 6 months ago, this galaxy was ruled by fear and oppression, Sang Min continued. The strong dominated the weak, and advancement came only through conquest and exploitation. Today, we offer a different path. A path where strength comes from cooperation, where advancement comes from shared knowledge, and where every being has the opportunity to reach their full potential. In the audience, Admiral Hyunwoo Kim listened with quiet satisfaction. He remembered standing on the bridge of the Soul's Fury, delivering humanity's final warning to the Empire. He had promised that humanity would conquer and devour their enemies, but even he had not fully understood what those words would mean. Humanity had indeed conquered the Empire, but not in the way that conquest had been understood before. They had not destroyed their enemies or ground them into submission. Instead, they had shown them a better way to live, and their enemies had chosen to become allies, and humanity had devoured the Empire, absorbing its technology, its resources, and its people. But instead of weakening those they absorbed, humans had made them stronger. Imperial technology became better when enhanced by human innovation. Imperial resources became more productive when managed by human efficiency. Imperial citizens became happier and more prosperous when governed by human principles of fairness and opportunity. The Terran Federation is not an empire, President Sang Min explained to the gathered representatives. We do not rule through force or fear. Every world in our Federation joined us by choice, and every world can leave by choice. We stay together not because we must, but because we benefit from cooperation. Dr. Na-Rae Kim sat in the section reserved for scientific advisors, surrounded by colleagues from dozens of different species. The research and development achievements of the past 6 months had exceeded even human expectations. When brilliant minds from across the galaxy worked together, sharing knowledge freely instead of hoarding it jealously, the results were spectacular. New energy sources had been developed that could power entire star systems. Medical advances had eliminated diseases that had plagued various species for millennia. Transportation technology now allowed instant communication and rapid travel across the galaxy. Most importantly, environmental restoration techniques were healing worlds that had been damaged by centuries of imperial exploitation. Our greatest strength, Sang Min said, gesturing to the diverse audience, is not our technology or our military might. It is our unity in diversity. Every species brings unique perspectives, unique skills, and unique knowledge to our common endeavors. Together we achieve things that no single species could accomplish alone. But perhaps the most remarkable transformation was visible in the former imperial citizens themselves. Captain Bo-Ram Lee, who had spent years undercover in imperial intelligence, now served as director of interspecies relations. Her job was to help former imperial worlds transition to Federation membership, and she approached the task with the same dedication she had once shown to espionage. The adjustment period varies by species and world, she reported during the daily briefing session. But in general, former Imperial citizens are adapting well to Federation membership. Quality of life indicators are up across all measured categories. Most importantly, we are seeing voluntary cultural exchange and cooperation between species that were once segregated under imperial rule. General Tae-min Park, now serving as Minister of Defense, nodded approvingly. What about security concerns? Are there any remaining imperial loyalist movements? Very few, and they are declining rapidly, Boram replied. Most former imperial citizens who initially opposed Federation membership have changed their minds after seeing the benefits. Those who still object are free to relocate to neutral worlds outside Federation space. This was perhaps the most remarkable aspect of the new order. Unlike the Empire, which had forced compliance through threat of violence, the Terran Federation maintained its unity through demonstrated benefits. People supported the Federation not because they feared punishment for opposing it, but because membership genuinely improved their lives. Commander Dong-Hyun Choi oversees the massive logistics of galactic governance from his position as Director of Communications. The challenge of coordinating policy and administration across thousands of worlds and hundreds of species was staggering, but human organizational skills proved equal to the task. All major Federation worlds are now connected through our quantum communication network, he reported. Real-time consultation between member worlds is now possible for the first time in galactic history. We can coordinate policy decisions across the entire galaxy in a matter of hours rather than months. The practical benefits of this coordination were visible everywhere. When a natural disaster struck one world, aid from dozens of others arrived within days. When a scientific breakthrough occurred in one system, the knowledge was immediately shared with researchers across the galaxy. When new trade opportunities developed, all member worlds could participate equally. But the most profound change was in the attitudes of galactic citizens themselves. For the first time in centuries, beings across the galaxy looked to the future, with hope rather than fear. Children grew up expecting to live better lives than their parents. Scientists pursued knowledge for the betterment of all rather than the advantage of a few. Artists created works that celebrated diversity rather than enforcing conformity. Admiral Hyun-woo Kim now served as Space Fleet Commander, overseeing the combined fleets of the Terran Federation. His ships no longer needed to patrol for Imperial threats or suppress rebellions. Instead, they explored new regions of space, established peaceful contact with previously unknown species, and protected trade routes that brought prosperity to all member worlds. Fleet status report, he requested during the morning briefing. All patrol sectors quiet, reported Captain Soo-Jin Park, now serving as his deputy commander. No conflicts, no distress calls, no requests for military intervention. The third. Exploration fleet has made contact with a new species in the Outer Rim. Initial communications suggest they are interested in learning more about the Federation. Hyun-woo smiled. Dispatch a diplomatic mission. Standard first contact protocols. If they choose to join us, welcome them. If they prefer independence, respect their decision and offer trade relationships. This approach to expansion was completely different from imperial methods. The empire had spread through conquest, forcing other species to submit to imperial rule. The Terran Federation grew through invitation, offering membership to any species that wanted to join while respecting the independence of those who preferred to remain neutral. The results spoke for themselves. In 6 months, over 50 new species had voluntarily joined the Federation. Dozens of others maintained friendly relationships while remaining independent. Most remarkably, not a single species had requested to leave the Federation after joining. Dr. Eun-ji-han looked up from her research console in the Advanced Sciences Division. Around her, the best minds from across the galaxy worked on projects that would have been impossible under the Empire's secretive and competitive system. Dr. Han called out her Andromedan colleague. The terraforming project for Kepler 442b is ready for final approval. We can have a garden world suitable for multiple species within 18 months. Yunji reviewed the project specifications with satisfaction. Kepler 442b had been a barren rock when the Empire controlled it. But Federation terraforming technology, combining the best knowledge from dozens of species, could transform it into a paradise where multiple civilizations could thrive together. Approved, she said. Begin Phase 1 operations immediately, and send invitations to all member species. This will be a joint colony with representatives from every major civilization in the Federation. Meanwhile, in the education centers that had replaced Imperial indoctrination facilities, young beings from different species learned together for the first time in galactic history. Human children played alongside Zolonian youngsters, Centaurian students worked with Andromedan classmates, and former enemies discovered.